All right, so I'm going to start disassembly on the Premier PC-400. This is basically just a disposable point and shoot camera that you can reload. It's kind of nice because it does have a flash built into it. So, it doesn't, you're not really that limited in where you can use it and how you can use it because of the flash. So one of the issues with disassembling, disposable cameras like this and the plastic ones, they're putting screws into plastic, and they're metal screws going into plastic, so you could always strip them out. So you have to be really careful with the screws on these things. One of the other things you have to worry about with disassembling these things is just if something's plastic welded together, you're going to have to cut stuff and break it apart. Fortunately, with this type of camera, there's really no concern over that. It comes apart pretty easily. So here you're going to see I'm kind of pointing out some screws that I'm going to take off here to remove this back plate. It's only 3 of them. Once you get that film rewind lever out of the way, you can easily access all 3 screws. The top plate screw being the worst one, the one that's kind of hidden in behind there. Unlike most cameras, when you remove the film rewind knob, in this case you have to remove the screw that holds everything together on top. Typically, you just grab the handle and wind it back, jam the thing up, and it goes. So very carefully wiggle things apart with this. I don't want to break the camera. Even though the camera cost me nothing, it was given to me for free, I still want to be able to fix it and get it working again. Why? Because I don't know. It's just fun to do. You learn a lot about how a camera operates by taking apart some of these cheaper ones. It may not translate necessarily one-to-one to a better camera, but you at least get an idea of how things operate on the inside. A lot of these sped up portions of the video are just me figuring out how to take it apart. Okay, this is one of the most challenging things with any camera that you've never taken apart and you can't find information for online, is figuring out what is my next step. And that's constantly what you have to be doing. You're constantly in your head going, okay, that worked, what's next? A lot of times you'll find that step 1 will lead to step 2, and then you realize that actually there was a step 1A, and you have to kind of work backwards and then forward. And it's a bit frustrating at times. Thankfully, with this camera, this Premier PC-400 was super easy. It is just basic. You see a screw, you take that screw out, and you can disassemble things. So, I'll kind of try and narrate a little bit of the video as we go here. But really, at the end of the day, there's not much for me to say about this. I mean, you see me taking it apart. I can't really say much. This was one thing that I just about ruined it for me. I was hunting for the screw that held that side together. It wasn't a screw, it was the sticker for the battery compartment. Okay, this is one of the most shocking things about this camera to me, is the ISO selection does nothing other than move an aperture in front of the lens. That is it. It does nothing to the shutter speed. It does nothing to the electronics of the camera. The electronics in this camera exist only for the flash. That is it. It operates the flash. The flash is synced with the shutter. The shutter is the most basic leaf shutter you could possibly imagine. The issue I had with this one was it was jammed. So in saying it was jammed, I mean I could not get the shutter to charge by moving the rewind wheel, the advanced lever, the advanced wheel in the back. I could wind that all day long, get to the stopping point, depress the shutter button. It would release the advance lever, or the advance wheel would release it, right? But would not fire the shutter. So I was unsure of kind of how to solve that with the camera fully assembled. Well, once I took it apart, it became apparent what was going on. In the video, it's a little hard to see exactly what was preventing the shutter from firing, but at the end of the video, I kind of explain where my thought process was as far as to what was going on, and I feel I was fairly accurate in that thought process. So once you get to that point, you'll kind of understand, you know, what I'm talking about. So here I am removing basically the viewfinder and the advance. This is probably the most parts that come out of the camera, to be honest with you. It's 4 screws that hold this thing on, then 2 screws that hold on the lever for the shutter. Okay, and that's part of the shutter fire system, is that lever that slides up and down. So that's got to come out of your way first before you can remove the viewfinder and the film advance and the film counter, which is all there on top. So here we go. See, this whole thing pops out, and there's my film counter. That wobbly piece there, that is the actual film advance knob. Okay, that is what advances the film and charges the shutter at the same time. Okay, all these pieces I feel need to come out so you don't lose them. And as I'm taking them out, I'm paying attention to orientation. I'm paying attention to slots, where slots are, where grooves are, you know, that kind of thing. This next piece I take out here, this is, I'm not exactly sure what to call it, but that's kind of the thing that keeps tension on the film as you wind it, as you advance it. It's just like a tensioning lever that applies tension then to the advance knob. So that way you can't overwind. You know, it's also what causes it to stop once you've passed the frame you've exposed. And again, you can see me kind of paying attention to the orientation of that piece and how it was set in there. Because that little spring that sits down inside there that I pull out here, that whole assembly has to go back in the same way. So that way it stops every time you want it to. All right, so kind of messing around here with the whole shutter assembly and the shutter mechanism. And you can see all that grease. That's kind of what was going on with it. But anytime you advance the film, okay, that silver arm slides to the left, all right? And that's in the charged position. It then gets stuck there by a little lever that holds it in place, okay? Here I'm trying to manually operate the shutter. The shutter will not move. It doesn't budge. I'm not pressing very hard on the shutter, but it's still like welded in place almost. I suspect that some grease had gotten back there. All right, that's what I suspect. I determined at this point that I need to remove the lens to get into a better point at which I can access the shutter assembly. Was that part necessary to remove? At the end of the day, no. If you're doing this, if you're fixing a shutter issue, you could leave that in place. Okay, you could leave the lens in place. You don't need to worry about any of that. I was not sure exactly what I was dealing with and what I was going to have to remove. So I felt it best just to remove everything I possibly could. And that's what I did in this case. And there you go. All I had to do was just push on that a certain way, and then it just popped right open, right? So now that it's free, I can get it to operate and get it to fire the way it needs to. The problem then became getting that lever, or getting that, you know, piece right there that I'm moving, getting that to slide consistently in its tracks. That is such a poorly put together piece of crap. Like, it is not, to say it is engineered is an overstatement. All right, it is just thrown together with no thought process as to how it operates. All right, so that whole slide piece, that whole thing that slides up top there, it's got to jump up and over the shutter arm and then smack back across it and open the shutter. Well, there's nothing to keep that thing in track. It just kind of wants to go where it wants to go. So here we go. This is high-speed shutter operation. You can see that the shutter does actually clear completely. Pop. There's your aperture all the way open. Oop, closed, done. Why did the shutter stop working? Well, as you can see, it's it's the most basic of all leaf shutter systems. All right. There's really not that much to it. So what would cause it to fail to the point where it felt like it was jammed when you press the button? Thinking about it, I'm really not sure exactly, but I suspect it's this greasy stuff down in here, which is put there to create lower friction between the plastic as it slides, you know. I half suspect that You know, as with most greases and stuff like that, they tend to get gummy after a period of time, and then they stop providing lubrication and they start actually providing a tack. The other thing is I don't think this arm is bent in the correct way. I'm not exactly sure how it's supposed to be bent, but I think it's a little off. So I'll see if I can't maybe straighten that up. We'll get rid of this grease down in here and see if that maybe makes it operate smoother. But I don't know. I mean, sometimes it does fire perfectly fine, and other times it gets sticky. It's like there, it's stuck, but that's, I think, beyond what the normal lever operates. So, I don't know, we'll see.